Bladen County Commissioners meeting. At this time, we're going to ask Reverend Sam Van Slyke from the First Baptist Church of Bladenburg to come forth and give our invocation. And immediately after that, Mr. Martin will lead us in our faith. Everyone stand, please.
Let's pray. Father, we come before you, Lord, and first of all, Lord, we just want to praise you for being so faithful to us. We thank you, Father, for these commissioners. We thank you, Father, for those that are here that serve our county and our area and our communities. I pray, Lord, a special prayer of blessing on their life. Lord, overwhelm them with your love, your peace, your understanding. And Father, just bless them, Lord, Father, for their service. Father, we pray right now during this meeting, the information that will be shared. We pray, Lord, that you fill us with wisdom, and wisdom that can only come from you. Father, lead us, direct us, and may we trust in you in all things. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I trust everyone's gone over the consent items.
Motion to approve.
Second. We got a motion by Mr. Peterson and a second by Mr. Dillon. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? So moved. Individual delegation wish to address the commissioners. Special recognition at this time, Ms. Stacy Kinlaw, if you'll come forth, our United Way Repairing Resolution presentation. And I'm going to ask Madam Clerk if she would to read it for us.
Whereas United Way Week of Caring is a unique annual event of service that promotes the importance of county residents volunteering in their communities. And whereas Bladen County residents will join together with neighbors, family, and friends in the shared goal of helping those in need and improving the communities in which we live. And whereas through participation in activities from food drives to home repairs for hurricane victims, Bladen County volunteers served over 4,500 residents with more than 80 hours of service in 2019. And whereas it is wonderful to see the hard work of such a strong coalition of faith-based, civic, and educational organizations striving toward even greater volunteerism in the future. Now, therefore, the Bladen County Board of Commissioners hereby proclaims November 2nd through 7th, 2020 as United Way Week of Caring in Bladen County and encourages citizens to participate for the betterment of our community.
Thank you, and on behalf of the Commissioner, we really thank you for all you do and all the United Way workers. I had the privilege of being chairman one year, and that was a very good time for me to learn a lot, and we just pray and hope everyone would give truly this time. Thank you again so much. Matter of interest to commissioners. Everyone. Yes, sir.
On the personnel department, not personnel, but personnel HR. I was looking at the job description that came out of the HR director. And I know we have an employee that's been there part-time for probably the last 4 or 5 years, so for a while. And I was wondering, could we, instead of amending the job description, could we look at that person being hired as a full-time employee to assist that HR director? And I was wondering, because the manager come back with us with some figures on that and some responsibilities, because here lately it's kind of been difficult for us to retain our HR director. And I'm thinking maybe we add some more staff into it to assist the director. We may be able to retain a person for a longer duration of time. You can look at that and give us a report back on that, Mr. Chairman, from county manager. And making that a full-time, still a part-time position.
Mr. Britt, I got a couple of things.
Okay. Yes, sir.
I would ask toward law enforcement, and it gets circulated to our law enforcement and also to all the towns so that they will have the opportunity maybe to do the same thing that we do tonight.
Anyone else?
I got one thing.
Yes, sir.
In East Point, we got the letter that we have received that the grant from East Point for $50,000. We do have to, it'll be on the agenda next time, I think, Greg, we do have to sign, approve, and everything like that. The board has to accept it, but I did want you to know that we were awarded that $50,000 for 21.
Anyone else?
Mr. Chair, would you consider bringing Dr. Duncan sent a proclamation to look at the COVID and how it affects people of color? I would like that to come back to the board to take effect of at the next meeting.
Mark? Anyone else? Finance Department, Ms. Lisa Coleman.
Good evening, each other. I'd like to review the dashboard with you for the month ending of September. Hard to believe it was 3 months already into the new year. The revenues for the general fund were 32%, and the expenditures were 22.8%. For general fund, solid waste was at 46.9% revenues and 19.5% in stocks and expenditures. Commercial telephone fund was at 16.68% revenues and 5.74% in expenditures. And the water district was at 23.91% in revenues and 8.11% in expenditures. Does anybody have any questions on the dashboard?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
we received some reports about, I think it was financing on the jail.
I was going to go over that next.
Okay.
Any questions on the dashboard? Okay. I attached 2 other reports to my report this time. The first one was the 1920 federal inmate program. We budgeted to receive approximately $590,000, and then we hired 8 detention officers and a part-time and a full-time maintenance person. And then we had the expenses of the additional vans, maintenance equipment, and uniforms. And at June 30th, the net on that was $273,000 over the revenues. The revenues were over the expenditures. So that was for 1920. If you look over at the second one I sent you for 2021, right now we have budgeted $1,724,000 to receive in for revenues. We have the food and the medical. We have the same positions to come out of that, as well as the raises that were given to the law enforcement officers in the jail and in the communications. And then we have $82,000 for maintenance and HVAC and utilities and that type of thing. And then the sheriff did put aside $307,000 towards the loan payment. You'll see there, I've estimated based on 75 for the remainder of the year. We have 63 budgeted to have it all full time. But we've estimated at 75 just to be on the safe side. And that would give us an additional $418,000 over all the expenditures that we already have budgeted. Right now, when we did this report at the end of September, we were averaging about 84. Today, I read the report, and we're running 80 is what was in the jail as of this morning. Does anybody have any questions?
On that, when we talk about, I know we appropriate some money that we budgeted to fund those positions with the sheriff department. And so we are meeting that.
That's coming out of this
We're
money.
generating that. But on a reoccurring cost, is that 62 figure what would generate to cover that reoccurring cost? If it fell lower than that, would it miss the reoccurring cost, or how would that happen?
Okay, the 62 generates enough to bring in the 1.7 million in revenues, and then to cover the food and medical that we have to supply for them is almost $345,000. Then out of that, we're taking out the 734 to cover the detention officers and the new positions and the raises.
for 62, the recurring cost, it would be,
That covers it right
would
now.
be sufficient always if we kept that level of
Yes,
inmates.
sir. We've got enough in there to cover that plus. Because, you know, we actually put in there the 82,000 for the maintenance and things, and then the loan payment was 307,000 that we came out of this money.
That's what we reimburse it back to the county or to the?
Yes, going towards the loan payment,
Going to one loan payment, 307,000,
$307,000.
going to one loan payment, addition to what we appropriate. Is that what you're saying?
Not into
Not
addition.
addition, but that's part, that's going, being applied toward the $947,000
$947,000.
bond payment.
But I'm asking the question, when we put that money in there and that amount comes out, that's the part that comes back into the general fund that returns, and that's what you're saying, coming back to the general fund, $392.
It's subtracted from the amount of the payment the general fund would have to put in, that 307. So in essence, we got 947,000. The county would have to put in $640,000 to cover the payment.
Mr. Chairman, if I understand the question correctly, that is not included in the net figure that she gave you.
No,
That's not in the.
No, that's right. The net figure is over and above, after the 307 is applied toward the debt service payment.
I was just trying to figure out how much we looking at appropriating back to help out with that loan payment. That would be the 307 you referred to?
Yes, sir. And this was the first time that we did that. If you all recall, that was all part of our discussions related to COVID and that type of thing. So
Is that because of we gone with federal inmates, and is that because state inmates are down, they don't generate?
it's because of the federal,
So we don't maintain 62 at the federal level, then that cost would drop over the state sustained, that's what I'm asking.
and right now our average for the first 3 months this year was 84.
So it was sustained.
Mr. Brett, if for some reason that the inmates would drop, then we'd reduce what we have added into the budget. Employment, things like that would be reduced to justify.
So we would reduce the
We
employees.
would do whatever we have to. If by chance you was to lose that income, we would adjust our budget and personnel and everything else.
So I mean, we have to reshift personnel that may go down on duration.
Also, remember this as well, the less inmates, the fewer number of inmates we have, the fewer we have to pay for the food and the medical. So that way, we've got the full amount coming out for 62, for 365 days. We've already budgeted for that. That's on here. But if the numbers went down, the amount we would have to withhold for that would come out too. That would reduce.
I'm just trying to figure out how the numbers ran.
I need clarification now because I'm not sure about how the money's spent. But the money for the jail was in the bond? Where's that money coming?
It's a loan.
It was a loan, right? So that difference that the sheriff, the money we're getting for the detention, that 307,000, that we don't have to take out the budget. Where's that money going?
That money is going straight to the bond payment to USDA.
I know, but if we did not have that surplus money from the detention, it would come out of general fund, right?
Yes.
But now we're only doing 600 plus thousand. So where's that difference? The delta. Where's the delta? Where's that money?
it lowered the fund balance appropriation figure. You'll recall during the budget deliberations, we adjusted a number of revenues because we couldn't, in anticipation of reductions related to COVID.
Okay.
And so it basically, in essence, reduced that fund balance appropriation.
Okay. So now, within the next 6 months, by December, we should have a good feel of taxes, how much money we lost or how much less we received. Do we have that?
I can tell you right now what we brought in for the month of July. We were on Article 39, we had brought in 18% higher, 25% higher than what we did last July. Okay. Article 40 was at 9% higher.
Okay.
Article 42 was at 20, and Article 44, and that's the set amount they give us monthly, that was 4%. Now, out of that Article 40 and 42, we do have have to give approximately, what was it, 50% we averaged out to the schools.
Right.
So, Ms. Carter, one last question. So with the occupancy we have in the jail now at 230,000, somewhere in that neighborhood, if we had maximum capacity. what
We had
was-
156 today.
156. So we're saying if we go up higher with state inmates service and then with federal inmates service, all that will be cash that will just go in to cancel out the general fund portion of it, Mr. Martin? Is that what we're saying?
Well, that would need to be determined. That would all be part of the policy decisions and the budget deliberations by the board.
So that would be, I'm asking, can we freely move that money or not?
Yes,
So
sir.
that's-
I mean, if it's available for, yes, I mean, that's revenue, excess revenue that's available to be appropriated by the county as the Board of Commissioners sees fit.
So if that trends up, you will make that available to us, what's trending up, if it goes up, the level goes up, if he gets 90 inmates in this, so you'll let us know.
Yes, sir. Our plan is to provide this information on a monthly basis as we,
Okay, and the staffing we have now on the whole is handle 62.
I'm sorry.
Do we have staffing in the jail to handle the 230? How much?
I don't know about 230, but we have, right now, the scale, and the sheriff's here, he may want to speak to this, but my understanding is right now, the staffing is scalable somewhat so that we can accommodate the inmates that are in the jail and that we anticipate being in the jail.
Well, the sheriff is there, but Sheriff, can you answer that for us if you don't mind? Could you come
I
up?
can't understand a word
I
you're
say,
saying.
if we go to the maximum capacity, do you have staff do what we're doing now to handle that?
And after that, no.
So we still have to increase staff and
Yes,
readjust
sir.
and realign and then.
It's right, common sense, that's common sense, right?
Okay, that's what I'm asking, that's
Yes,
what
sir.
we need to do. So this is just at that level, but as it goes up, he may need additional staff.
So all we're gonna pay out of, toward the jail bond is $307,000. The rest of it's going in budget and paying expenses to run, operate the jail.
Anything else? Thank you.
Thank you.
Sheriff's Office, Mr. Jim Vickers. You here tonight, sir, to consider approving the construction of a storage facility for military surplus vehicles. What's the pleasure of the board?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Peterson, by Mr. Gooden, a second by Mr. Peterson. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir, Mr. Floyd.
what bidding process was used to, come through this process here? Any bidding process?
I can't understand the question.
What bidding process did you use to arrive at this figure?
All that we got was
Informal.
informal quote
Informal quotes.
to come before the board. Is what we done so far. We'll get the 3 bids if we have to.
Thank you. Okay. So, that's the only question I had was how many bidders did you have on the project?
So the cost is with maximum 45?
We were just at $45,500.
Okay.
That's the informal bid that someone gave you.
We already got 3 bids. We already got 3 bids.
It's gonna cost $45,500 to do what we do. That's a 51-foot long building, 30-foot wide. With the groundwork done, the concrete poured, 8 inches in one day for the heavy military building.
And this is to be built on the grounds of the maintenance facility?
It will be the main facility. I've already checked with Kip and Clary. We've already got everything squared away. He has no problem with it. He agreed to it. I talked to the county manager. He agreed with it. And all I'm waiting for the approval of the board.
So you'll be submitting the bidding information, you say? That's coming forward?
I will, yes.
All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
Got 1 no, 8 yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Revenue Department, Mr. Renee Davis.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I have a tax appeal. Our office received an appeal from Ryan LLC, a CPA for the Cypress Creek Renewable. They are appealing their 2020 business personal property values listed in Bladen County, which includes 5 different listings. Bladen County was 1 appropriate schedule when valuing the business personal property. And this schedule was brought from the North Carolina Department of Revenue, from the 2020 cost index schedule. So during our P-tax listing, there were several counties that were questioning, what are we going to do because these are solar farms. So after careful consideration of the information provided by Ryan LLC and further research, North Carolina Department of Revenue came to the conclusion that the cost index factors were appropriate and reflected a true market value. So North Carolina Department of Revenue has recommended that we go through and hear the appeal and accord to the taxpayer the due process. But there'll be no value change, and we just need to see if you consider to agree and approve that.
Let's do it. Motion by Ms. Davis, second by Mr. Goodman. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Thank you.
Health and Human Services.
Good evening.
Good evening, ma'am.
It's been a busy week. Last week was one of our busiest weeks. And today was not any different for COVID-19. Since the time we met 2 weeks ago, we have had an increase. And I think I told you all that we were looking that way. So Bladen County is not a whole lot different than North Carolina and the rest of the nation. But as of today, North Carolina had 247,172 positive cases, with 3,939 deaths, 1,142 hospitalized, and that's the 11th or 12th day of greater than 1,000 hospitalized. And it's about the 13th day of the most hospitalizations since the COVID pandemic started. As of today, there's 218,541 recovered in North Carolina, and today's percentage was at 5.7%. So how's Bladen County doing? As of today, 1,042 cases with 96 active. When I was here last time, we were in the 50 to 60 range. We will be recovering some tomorrow, taking us probably down to the 80 range. 19 deaths, and 927 recovered. Currently, we have 5 in the hospital, and that is down since the last time we talked with you. And our positivity rate is 5.2%. So remember, the goal was 5% or less. Well, we reached that. However, our cases continue to rise. And it's important that we understand what one positive case will do. For every one positive case, there's normally at least 2 contacts. And those are people that have been within 6 feet for longer than 15 minutes. At least one of our cases last week had over 20 contacts. So if you look at any business, any school, any agency, and you look at the potential of what one person can do, it's vitally important that we stress the importance, encourage the importance of the 3 W's, and that the social distancing, that wearing a mask, and you pick your constituents where you're from, and think about the large gatherings that might have been in your constituents, in your region of the county in the last week, or 2 weeks, or a month. Usually from the time we have a large gathering, it takes at least 2 weeks to find out everybody that's going to be positive. And then it takes another 2 weeks for those that are really sick to get sick enough to be hospitalized. So encouraging folks, I've said we need to learn to live with this pandemic. And to live with it, we need to practice the 3 W's if we want to go on and maintain things being open and us getting back to any form of normalcy. Along with the 3 W's, please get your flu vaccine. If you haven't had it yet, a good time to come to Morris from 4 to 7. At the health department, we drive down in the drive-through. From start to finish, it's 10 minutes or less, and you don't even have to get out of your vehicle. The North Carolina State Department of Health and Human Services submitted their vaccination plan, mass vaccination, to the federal government on last week. We are, part of our flu vaccines, we are practicing the 4 to 7 so that we could practice giving immunizations when it's about this, at least close to dark. Because mass vaccination would be longer than just a 4-hour period or a 5-hour period. Some exciting things are going on as far as testing. We do have the availability that I talked with you last week about all of the Bladen Medical Clinics testing, as well as Commonwealth Health have the drive-through every Tuesday. Baldwin Branch is having a drive-through on October the 21st, and we'll be having a November the 11th drive at Baltimore Center. We're working on additional drive-throughs as we speak, so more information coming there. Through Mount Calvary Leadership Institute, we have our first community health worker. I spoke with you about that a month or so ago, and they finally were able to get started literally on last Monday. And that's for folks that have been affected by the COVID virus and are actually in isolation or quarantine at the time. DSS, the health department, has the ability to contact Mr. Anthony Thomas, which is from Bladen County, and is a part-time health worker here, community health worker, so that he can, all of the requests have to go through Mr. Thomas before it can go out to the vendor to help get those resources. And it does include some cash monies for $400 to $800. So when we look at how we were affected as far as age, race, and gender, that 25 to 49-year-old group continues to be our largest spreader at 40.8%, followed by the 50 to 64 with 22.8%, and 18 to 24 at 12.3%. Our gender, our males are at 51.6% and females at 48%. The African American population is 26.2%, Caucasian 47.8%, and other 16.3%, with a 27.6% Hispanic and a 53.3% non-Hispanic, and 19% are non. As of today, 7.8% of our cases were hospitalized. So we're approaching a 10%, getting closer every day. And as you know, we had our 19 deaths.
Mr. Chair, 2 questions. The first one, you said for Baltimore Center to drive, what day?
November the 11th. And that's Commonwealth Health is partnering with us.
They, Veterans Day, they're going to be,
It's drive-through. And the very first drive-through we did was at Baltimore Center.
I know, but on Veterans Day, it makes it closer.
That's the one they chose.
Secondly, I'm not sure if I'm talking to the same person. Anthony, he's going to talk about nutrition assistance and that relief money.
Yeah.
That's
Is
the
this the
same
same
thing.
guy?
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, okay. I
That's the
wasn't
same
sure.
thing.
He's here, okay. All right.
Mr. Chairman, I've got one question. I was looking at the school system and they shut down some schools. And I'm trying to figure out who is responsible for doing the tracing and keeping up with that when the school get inundated or something like that. Does the health department deal with that? Who
Yes,
deals with
sir.
that?
Yes, sir. The school is helping us to determine close contacts as well as the individual in close contacts. The school has to be involved because they have to make the determination on whether or not they're going to stay in person or go virtual.
Okay, so y'all have to do the tracing on that.
We're doing the tracing.
Yeah, because the reason I asked that, when you give the tracing out, do you guys don't say about how many being quarantined? You don't put that in the report.
No, sir.
Some of the people are asking, when you do this, and that many people have it, how many people being quarantined?
So if you take that 96 and you multiply it by 2, that's a minimum.
Of how many people that's been in that close contact?
Yes, sir. And remember that it's up to, we really are up to people being transparent and honest with us. If we contact them and they say, well, no, I haven't been around anybody, that's all the information we have. So some people will tell us, no, I don't have any close contacts.
The reason I was saying that, they say right now, the cases are rising in the rural area quicker and faster than anywhere. And I'm trying to figure out how we going to trace things.
And so we are tracing and we are advising people of the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services guidelines. And Wednesday of last week, I was in one of our municipalities at 8 o'clock because I had 4 complaints of a person being non-compliant with staying at home. And this actually was a positive individual.
Okay.
Mr. Duncan, I'm not trying to get school business, but I know the article in Dublin, and I don't know if East Arcadia was the same article or not, but you talk about it won't report on state because it won't cluster. So 5's a cluster.
That's fair.
So it has to be under 3, or it would be reported. Or it has to be under 5.
Correct.
For reported. So why, well, you probably can't answer this, but my curiosity, what people ask me, why they shut school down? Why didn't they just take the people out of school if it was below that number? And you don't have to answer, I'm on.
Well, you do have to look at.
That's what I've been asking.
That's why I said at the beginning, one positive, depending upon where it is, can impact an entire business, an entire school. I mean, if you've got all of your staff is positive, whether it's a business, a school, any agency, and they have to stay home unless they are essential personnel, or they are close contacts of a positive. So that's why it's very important that when we are at work and when we are at leisure, that we abide by that.
So the follower of you, I won't say what you would just go for me. So at the college, if someone tests positive, they test the people in contact and they keep on, the college is still open.
Correct.
And that's where the questions I've been asking, I mean, the school board can't answer it, but.
Well, because again, at the college, in any situation, we look at where's the positive, where are the close contacts.
Quit talking my question, move on.
I'm not dogging it. That is exactly, we look, and if it's confined to one building, then you don't need to quarantine or isolate the entire school.
But who notified the parents in schools? If you have teachers that were had close contact with somebody who's positive, who notified the parents of the school system, those children?
So per the guidelines, if the school is aware of a positive, they have to notify me.
Okay.
If I'm aware of a positive in the school, I have to notify them. Today, I've been notified before I've had to notify them on any of the schools.
So I'm worried about the children though. If you had a person who's positive, and then some of the support staff and the teacher were had contact, she goes back to the classroom, people in the cafeteria, they have access. Who notifies them? They don't? The kids don't be quarantined?
If we, again, we determine the close contacts, and the close contacts are notified by the health department.
So, Dr. Nunn, if I may please. On Bladen County, there was an interview with some guy, a parent in Dublin, and he said he got voicemails from the school there. He has not had any personal contact with anyone. He got 2 voicemails.
Okay.
And part of that is there's a positive. I was apprised of a positive case on Friday. We just got the positive result today. So I can't act until I have that positive result. And remember back when we said, I advised you that we were at the mercy of the providers to notify us? Well, we still are. When I knew that there was a positive, had been notified of that, even talked to the individual myself on Saturday morning. But as of But today was the day we got the official.
Yes, let me make sure, Miss, one last question. Whenever the school system was closed, I seen the numbers that they had in the paper saying how many people had gotten tested positive, that number, I looked and said, my goodness. Do you make that call to say it's a cluster, even though the state don't classify it as a cluster?
When we made the call as a cluster, we submitted to the state.
So you made the call that it was a cluster?
That's correct.
You did that?
Correct.
Okay, that's all I want to make sure.
Mr. Duncan,
What school was that?
Oh, four.
Emory had a cluster.
Dublin did.
Not as of yet, no, sir.
I referred 3 cases to Mr. Thomas today. Now, I don't know whether they're in Bladen or whatever, but they called me. I don't know how he got my number, but he called me. I referred to Mr. Thomas. And also I asked Dr. Tyson to get in contact with you. I don't know whether he has or
I
not.
haven't heard from Mr. Tyson.
I asked him to contact you. But these individuals seem like they really were looking forward to receiving aid because of being quarantined. That's what they were looking at. So like I said earlier, I referred those 3 to Mr. Thomas.
So the next item is to consider approving a public health studies program. It's a UNCW public health student that would like to do an internship with us from January till May of 2021.
Motion to approve.
Second. Peterson, second from Mr. Good. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
And this is item C is consider approving a contractual agreement with Nutrition Plus. Remember, you approved for us to hire an RN. That RN will be joining us the end of the month, and we need Nutrition Plus until we can get her here and get her trained. And we do have monies allocated for that.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Got a motion by Mr. Bullock. We got a second by Dr. Montgomery. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? So moved. Thank you, Dr. Montgomery. Computer operation, Robin Good.
Talk about different viruses this time. October is cybersecurity month, and we took the opportunity to send out a couple of flyers to our employees. The first one we sent out was 6 steps to look for in emails to alert people that something may be amiss. I'd like to go over those real quick. Our first step is to just be cautious. Start every day it can be possible. Step 2 is to look for spelling errors. A lot of these emails are coming from overseas, so you'll see things spelled wrong, and you'll also see wording wording's different, and they'll have grammatical errors, and that's because they're not familiar with our native English. Step 3 is to look for calls for urgency. That's usually the time to step back and put it aside for a few minutes and let yourself calm down. The emails are trying to cause the panic, so you'll do things without thinking, and we're asking them to just take a step back, calm down, reread it, go over it, and go through these steps really. Step 4 is to verify any links that are inside the email, and there's a really easy way of doing that. You can take your mouse and hover over the link, and it will pop up a little tiny ribbon that tells you where it's going. So if it's saying I'm going to this direction, and then you hover over it, it's a completely different website, that's a good indication something's amiss. And we want we want everybody to stop and take a look at that. Step 5 is to look at the sender info. Again, you'll see what we would think is typos, but there can only be one of me, okay? So what they'll do is they'll put like a dot in between my first name and last name, and that's just enough difference that it looks like it's coming from me, but it actually isn't. It's coming from a completely different person. And the last step is to look for inside the email of whether or not they're looking for personal information, like your phone number, your date of birth, things like that. People shouldn't be asking those things in emails. They should be doing that in person. So that was the first thing we sent out. The week later, we sent out another reminder that just gave an indication to the employees of, basically it was a list of statistics. And the last one's the most important. And I made it large and highlighted it. And that is 90% of the breaches are caused by human error. That's the most dangerous thing in our network are our employees. However, I'd like to say our employees have been extremely good about this. I do get phone calls of people questioning it, but that's what we want them to do. We want them to question, just like I have in these steps. We want them to call me or somebody else and verify, is this information correct? And I've got to say, our employees are very good about that. Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Considering any session of Bladen County Board of Board. Got a motion by Mr. Goodman, second by Mr. Dixon. Further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye.
Good evening.
Good evening, Larry.
I have been asked to give you an update on the progress for the Phase 4 construction. And as you know, this project was broken out into 3 separate contracts. Contract 1 was the water main installation itself. Currently, on Grimsley Farm Road, all pipes have been installed. The work remains on final tie-ins, installation services, testing, and disinfection. When we say final tie-ins, they've got to do a couple more bores to get them tied in on the very end of the road, but all the pipes been laid on the roadside. And then we will follow with installation of meters, testing, and then disinfection of the system, and then customers can click on. We anticipate that should be available to those customers in 4 to 5 weeks. Grimes Road, all pipes installed except under NC 87. Again, this is a casing board. This will be done in the next few weeks. And then after that will be final service installation, testing, and disinfection. They're anticipating 6 to 8 weeks on that one. The line has been laid on Lassane Road and Nathan Robinson Road. All pipes in the ground there, final tie-ins, installation services, and disinfection has to happen there also. Again, about 6 to 8 week turnover. Over on Marshall Mill, all pipe is installed except under the road near Rosendale Road intersection. And I think some of them passed this morning and asked me about an open excavation over there. That's what they're waiting for there. Airport Road, 90% of the is complete with pipe installation, and there's still some more to do there. Old NC 20, they got started on that last week before. About 40% of the pipes installed so far, and they're making good progress up there. Easy digging, driving around, and making good progress. All directional bores, which are those long tubes that push in on the roads, under the creeks and all this stuff, all of that is complete. And the tap installation crew is going to start actually putting taps in on Grimsley Farm Road pretty soon. What that means is they go back, they dig up over the main and put the meter by the person's yard where this is going to happen. And because of this construction, we've got a lot of folks who have come in and started paying for taps once they see those crews move in. And that helps generate a lot of customers along that way that may not have signed up initially. And as I shared with Mr. Martin recently about this, what we've agreed to in the contract on the meters, that the new meters that are being installed for these taps, is for the contractor to make 2 passes through. Right now, we've got a list of people that have already signed up, agreed to connect on the water. That number is growing, so when we give him that list, he'll go out and get started on it. And as they're doing that, other people may come in, so then they'll do one more time and come through and put those taps in for those people. And that also, as it generates that additional interest in what we're doing, gives us the opportunity to clean up those areas as we go through one time through and a final to get everything in place for those customers. The production well, I'm happy to announce that the selection of the second site yielded a great supply of water. The well was designed for 300 gallons a minute, and currently it's pumping 500 gallons a minute, but we are experiencing some color in that. Some slight turbidity, but it does come out when you're pumping at that rate with a slight orange color. I have requested that the contractor do a second pump test on this at a then we'll have well capacity there that still exceeds what the original design was without having to do additional filtration. If it doesn't, then we've got to make a choice to 300 GPM or design for sand filtration. Won't be a lot different from some of the other wells we have that have sand filtration, but we didn't want to spend that money if we didn't have to. And that's what's all outlined there. So he's still got some more samples to pull and analyze as we move through that second well pumping process. And then meter replacements. We have now got 28 to 2,900, since this report was done, we've got 28 to 2,900 meters out there in the ground now that are all new electronic meters. And they are revealing some situations with some customers' connections. Some are seeing leaks that they didn't have before. And we were able actually to go back to that meter and tell them actually how much water has been flowing for how many hours. We didn't have that availability before. But we now can do that, and some people are actually going on and finding these leaks and getting them corrected. But we've now, bills went out today on the second set of bills that have these new electronic reads in them. So we're going to see some changes in our billing process as well as in the customer's bills that they're receiving with these new meters in the ground. These meters are much more efficient than the old stuff we had out. And contractor's been working great with our staff, bringing us updated list of everything that's going in, letting us know what's had to be skipped over because of size or interferences and what they're going back to when that happen. But Tina and the staff have been working really hard to double track every customer's account and be sure that they get the final read on the old meter and the new read on the new meter when it goes in, so that there's minimal billing errors as we go along through this process. Yes, sir.
Can I ask you a question? I see you install lines on the airport where some of y'all install. When I put the line in from the county, I had to run lines all of them out.
Yes, sir.
To get water.
Yes, sir.
Is there any limitations on how far a person can run water that you would allow?
We can allow that person to go as far as they need to go, but we typically don't recommend they go much more than a quarter of a mile, 1,500 feet.
Mine is 1,800.
Yeah, and you can get that. Now, some people are asking us about those, and they're paying for an upsized meter to do that. One recommendation we give them, and this is just an old engineering principle, the moment you leave the meter with the pipe, go with a little bit larger diameter pipe and then step it back down as you get closer to the residence. And what that does, it creates some storage capacity in the line as well as give you pressure on the other end. So you don't have friction loss in that long stretch of pipe. That's the one thing you're fighting. The pressure will still be the same, but you'll have friction loss on the flow.
So you have to get a meter design if it's going to be a 3-inch pipe.
No, sir. You can come off of a 1-inch meter with a reducer or a bell reducer and then go up to. We don't recommend you even put in a 3-inch pipe. We typically tell people go to 1 1/4, 1.5 inches, and then reduce to 1 inch and then the 3/4 at the end. Would typically give you all the flow you need to have.
But the reason I'm asking, I know some people that's tapping and they want to know if you put a meter in, what would be the restriction? So you're saying no more than 1,600 feet?
1,600, yeah, 1,800 feet would be a stretch, but yes, sir, you can still have it.
And we would allow the tap, they can run
Yes, sir.
1,600 feet.
Yes, sir. And we give them that little bit of engineering guideline to help them so that when they get to the other end, they've still got good supply. I have seen water lines that run as far as 2,000 feet, and the customer on the other end said they had more pressure than they ever had on their old private well. It can happen.
Mine's the same thing. So I enjoy mine, and I got 1.5 inches, I do believe. And it's running 1,600.
Right.
More feet.
Yes, sir. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Blair.
Thank you, sir.
Your motion to ask for water.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Good, second by Ms. Peterson. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Emergency services, Nate.
Good evening. We come to you tonight asking for your consideration to accept the NC 911 board grant award. Our public safety IT supervisor, Mr. Jeff Clark, our PSAP manager, is going to come up and explain that in more detail. I think you got the slideshow in your packet. He's going to be working on that.
Basically, I was tasked with finding some revenue streams to try to replace some old equipment in our 911 system. Very important equipment, runs 24/7, 365. And starting to get those numbers together, started to see project numbers looking at well over $500,000. The end result for the project cost at the moment is right around $747,000. So obviously, that's a lot of money. So I was looking at ways to try to bring some money in, whatever we could do. So I went ahead and found out that the North Carolina 911 Board does grants every year. So I went through that application process, and we received an award from them. It's a preliminary grant award. Basically, just to get through the deadlines. Basically, November 2nd, they just need to know if we're interested in accepting that grant. And then by January 1st, we would need to submit to them the completed agreement, which was also, I believe, in your packet. But basically, I wanted to get in front of you and just kind of explain, I just mentioned here's a $747,000 project. I wanted to explain kind of where these different costs were coming from as far as what the county would be responsible for if we did this project. Just a couple of ideas real quick. Our software that we're using now for records management and jail management and 911 CAD were all implemented in late 2014. But the hardware that is running those systems was implemented in 2009, 2010. So we're well beyond what the recommended lifespan is for that equipment. Basically, I'm going to go over to the project cost. Out of a total of $747,000, I offered in the grant that we would, back up and say, as part of the grant, they say that you need to offer some money from general funds. I took it upon to put in 10%, so I was asking the county to give $75,000 towards the project. The following three lines that you see in the source of funds would all be funds from 911 funds. So they're not general funds, they're not anything that we would have to give into the project. So I go on to explain the $90,000 on the next line is basically each year there's money collected from telephone bills to go into the 911 fund, and basically they've got a formula for figuring out expenditures for all the counties over a 5-year average, and so they'll give us that, whatever that average is, so that we can pay our annual bills for 911. But it has to be bills that they consider to be eligible. They put out a list every year of eligible items for 911 money. So they're very particular about what can be paid out of that fund, because that money is collected for a very specific thing. So in looking at what we would be receiving in our annual distribution, I was looking to put $90,000 of that distribution into this project. And then the third one, the fund balance. The fund balance is essentially, back when they first started the fund, they put a certain amount of money into our fund, and then every year, if we don't use the entire distribution that they give to us, whatever's left out of that distribution can go into our fund balance. And then that's an interest-bearing account, so basically that money sits there, and what they request that you use that money for in situations like this, where we have a large project that would cost a lot of money. People use it to build new 911 centers and replace all kinds of systems that are a lot more expensive. But we'd be looking at using $247,000 out of that fund balance. And finally, the grant funds. The grant funds are what I basically applied for and they handle ineligible expenses. So basically, anything that is not on that 911 approved list, you can use ineligible funds for that. So they're helping us cover that, and they're offering us just short of $335,000 for the grant. I pretty much covered the definitions there. So going to the last page, our distribution for 2021 was looking to be $277,000. Our expenses in 2020 were $220,000. So that's a difference of $57,000. And if you look back on the previous page, I said we would give $90,000. How I make up for that difference is our expenditures are going to be cheaper because we've renegotiated some contracts, changed some configurations and such, so we still will have money left over in that annual distribution to cover that $90,000. The fund balance as of June 30th was $353,000, and we were looking to take $247,000 out of that, so you can see we'll still have left over in that fund balance. We won't totally be depleting that. But again, the reason for not using more of that fund balance or anything is just because that comes back to the eligible versus ineligible things. So there's only so much we can pay out of that fund balance. And then the only other note I made here was, if we have some kind of overage, it is important to note that if for some reason some kind of costs change, if they go high, we would be responsible in some way. And I noted on that last page, either us or the other agencies involved, because part of this project includes the other law enforcement agencies in Bladen County. So if it's something that directly pertains to them, they would be responsible for that cost. If it's not able to be under this project. And likewise, if some of those costs go below what I projected, they would just simply take that grant money back. They would just pay our actual costs, and if there's anything left over, they take that back.
Must do it for a motion by Mr. Davis. Second. By Mr. Good. Any further discussion?
What other agencies are, you said, with the additional cost and their project and other agencies were involved, they would help? Are they putting any money up front?
They are not putting any money up front.
Cannot do that because the county is paying out of the general fund? Are they?
That's something we can talk about.
So I can answer. We, as the county, is the only people that use what we're talking about are law enforcement, fire departments, and certain our EMS. So right now, all of our law enforcement agencies in the county pay for their portion of what they use in their car. But larger cities have their own dispatch centers, but we as the county pretty much front the dispatch for all of the counties, even the municipalities, which will law enforcement, which will be Elizabethtown, Bladen, their law enforcement. They do pay for their portion of what they use in their car, as far as their individual subscriber fees and contracts they have with the company, but as far as them putting any money in our 911 center, they don't.
They just cost the job?
Ma'am?
Because you haven't asked or you choose not to?
They pay their own money.
Yeah, they pay their phone bills.
They pay their phone bills, and citizens that live in town limits pay town taxes too. So that's kind of.
Would this upgrade help with the communication piece of 911? What's going to be the major impact by the upgrade of the system? What we upgrading it to do what?
For one, the biggest part is the hardware. The hardware's, some of it's 10 years old, some of it's about 12 years old. So that hardware just needs to be replaced before we have a failure. And then the software side of it is basically, the situation we're in with the software that we have now, it's not fully fitting the needs that we have. There's a lot of functionality that we can get by changing software companies. Just in the course of technology, you buy something and the next year it's already outdated. But we're looking at stuff that's 6, 7 years old. And honestly, it's just I'm trying to be democratic. Basically, there's stuff that we were promised when we got this original system that never followed through. And so we're looking to get on something stable and something that we know other agencies use. This company that we're looking at, there's 50 other counties in the state that use it. So right now we're the only one that uses the system that we have now.
Well, that's is our system at the point that it may fail the needs.
The hardware, yes.
So it's at that point, so it
Yes.
needs to be upgraded before it fails.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? So moved. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Advisory board appointments, East Arcadia Fire Service District Committee 2.
Motion to approve.
Got a motion by Mr. Got a motion by Dr. Mondor to reappoint. Second by Mr. Cogdell. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. EMS Advisory Council 12.
Mr. Brett, I'd like to make a recommendation to put Jeff Culp in Beth Singatere's place, put James Green in Donald Bryan's place, and add Hollis Freeman and reappoint the rest.
Can I, hold on, I guess the first two people, person name you want to change.
Ms. Peter,
Jeff Culp.
Okay.
can I ask you one question, Ms. Peter? Did this make sure we cover the geographic area that
Yeah.
it falls into?
Yeah, all the thing we're like changing is the people that took jobs, different jobs.
So the geographic is still.
It's all the same.
Okay.
And Hollis Freeman, because he's listed down as the first responder, the fire department out, they need to have a voice in the.
Okay, I'm just trying to make sure we just got logistics.
You got this change from that clerk? Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? So moved. Keep Bladen beautiful.
Reappoint Kathleen McGowan.
Second.
Got a motion by Mr. Peterson, a second by Mr. Cogdell. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. Advisory board appointments consideration during November 21st, 2020 meeting, Bay Free Lake Fire Service District 2, Clarkton ETJ Advisory Committee 2, Clarkton Fire Service District Committee 3. Mr. Martin.
Good evening.
Good evening, sir.
I'd like to briefly review the calendar with you for the remainder of the month and for November. And point out that tomorrow, as Dr. Duncan indicated earlier, from 4 to 7, there's a flu drive, a drive-through flu clinic, and that will be held at the Bladen County Health Department, Marshall Road. Also at 7 p.m. Tomorrow evening, there is a family prayer service that will be held here on the courthouse lawn. That will also take place again on the 27th.
Mr. Brett, if I may comment on that, we as elected officials, we need to attend things like this. Need to put it on the calendar and be there tomorrow.
The courthouse on tomorrow?
Yes, sir. And it lasts 30, no more than 30 minutes of that.
Back it up to the flu shot, Mr. Dr. Duncan. Is there a charge or what's the charge for that?
If you don't have insurance from Medicaid, there's no out-of-pocket expense. If you don't have insurance, we'll find a way to give you an injection.
So you will be taking your insurance card? Thank you.
Mr. Martin?
Yes, sir.
For the 21st, add in, just in case someone is looking at the calendar online, add in the drive-by, drive-by testing at Morgan Branch.
Okay.
10 a.m. to 2 p.m.
Thank you. Moving over to the month of November, just want to mention that on Monday the 2nd at 8 a.m. there's a prayer service here. That also is the beginning of the United Way Week of Caring. Tuesday the 3rd is the election day, so please vote by then if you have not voted early. On Thursday the 5th at 12 p.m., the JCPC virtual meeting will take place. And on Saturday the 7th, from 8 till 4, there's a Harmony Hall Plantation Village Community Work Day. Now, we need wide at Harmony Hall. On Monday the 9th at 5 p.m., the Health and Human Services Advisory Committee meets. Also that evening at 6:30 p.m., the Board of County Commissioners meets here. On Tuesday the 10th at 12 p.m., there's a chamber luncheon at the Farmer Farm. I guess I'm not positive if that's in person, but I will confirm that with you before then. Also at 2 p.m. that day, the Bladen County Substance Use Disorder Task Force meets in the auditorium of the Community College. Wednesday the 11th is Veterans Day, and offices will be closed in observance of that holiday. The board also meets on Monday the 23rd at 6:30 p.m. and offices will be closed on Thursday and Friday the 26th and 27th in observance of the Thanksgiving holiday.
Just said that. What time did you say, Dr. Duncan, for Baltimore Center for COVID?
I think it's 10 to 2, but I
I
will
will
know.
Moving to the next agenda item, I'd like to recognize employees for years of service. If you all know, we do this quarterly. Beginning with Mr. Willie McLaughlin, who works in operations, he has attained 30 years of service. Mr. Chad Simpson in the Department of Social Services has attained 5 years of service. Vicki Smith in the Department of Social Services has attained 20 years of service. Lisa Nance in Social Services has 30 years of service. Jeff Cole in Emergency Management and IT has 5 years of service. Brian Storms in Emergency Medical Services has 5 years of service. Beverly Parks, the Register of Thieves, has 25 years of service. Carol Kane in the Revenue Department has 15 years of service. Hester Kilpatrick in the Sheriff's Office and works in detention, he has attained 5 years of service. Kimberly Jones in Communications has attained 25 years of service. James Daniels in the Sheriff's Office has attained 5 years of service. And Mr. Corey Thomas in the Sheriff's Office has attained 5 years of service. So we want to commend them and for their longevity in the county and thank them for their continued service. They will receive their recognition for the Moving on to item C, you all will recall that back last summer we had an in-depth process of request for qualifications and interviews with firms and that type of thing for our supplemental insurance benefits. And Lacey West Thomas Insurance, along with the Casing Group, was selected as the provider. We talked at that time about following up this year to see how things are going. And we have reached out to department managers and they've reached out to employees. And the feedback that we have received has been overall positive. And so that's a positive thing for the county and for employees. So I just wanted to update you as far as that. We ask questions like, do you think rates are reasonable? How happy are you with the choice of healthcare providers in Lake County's current plan? How easy is it to file a claim? And how satisfied are you with the outcome of the claims?
Mr. Martin.
Yes, sir.
John, you go.
Mr. Britt.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Martin, I know we do a survey, you probably get negative comments, or are you taking those things and
Yes,
sharing those with Lacey West Thomas?
We
Make sure that they're
actually
all.
talk to them.
Okay.
Yes, sir,
That's
Mr.
awesome.
Ricky. And we did hear things like deductibles are steep. We think that's referring to health insurance because there are no deductibles with the supplemental benefits. We also heard one that requested more affordable health insurance for spouses, and so that's related to the state health plan and not so. So there is some feedback we received that is not the most, that it may not pertain exactly to this, and we certainly should.
I just want to make sure we're following up.
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Martin, the question I had, when we looked at this thing, we were looking at the compatibility and the improvement with the HR and how we handle the workload. That's going on. What has that done?
It has helped improve efficiency in that regard.
So
It certainly has. We have one vendor we deal with. It is so much more streamlined for new employees. And that's one of the things we recognize. The experience for new employees versus the experience for tenured employees may be different. A new employee may not even realize how much better it is compared to the way it was previously, and so it's much.
The manageability of this is a whole lot better.
Yes, sir. It's more efficient, and it's just easier to understand. Employees clearly know, have the ability to easily know exactly what benefits they have, and what benefits are available to them.
And it's nice to see our HR director back there shaking her head up and down too, so that's a positive thing. Thank you, ma'am.
If there are no other questions on that, moving to item D. As you all recall, November is the month in which we recognize employees and appreciate their service. Traditionally, we have held a luncheon at the Powell Building Building. As you all know, the virus, that's really not the most feasible thing to do. And so we wanted to reach out to you. You all hopefully, I know some of you have received the email and had an opportunity to kind of think about that. So we just want to bring this to your attention in time to be able to provide some sort of recognition that you all feel good about it. I know I can speak as an employee and on behalf of other employees. That recognition is by the county commissioner certainly is appreciated. So we thank you for that fast, and just want to kind of put it on the floor for you all to decide how you'd like to express appreciation this year.
Sure, I would like to make a motion that we offer the employees 2 paid hours off of their choosing, as long as they coordinate appropriately with their department head to ensure that the workflow doesn't get disrupted. I think that would be a good, I hate that we all can't get together for the lunch, but I think that might be nice.
And she put that in form of motion. So you put that in form of motion, check, Mr. Chairman?
Second.
You second it? Good job. Okay.
Motion, Mr. Tripp, second by Mr. Peterson. Any further discussion on that?
And who are we talking about? Just
County
All
employees.
county
All
employees.
employees. Take 2 hours, yes.
There's no restriction on how long they've been here.
No restrictions for what?
How long they've been in the school.
No, not unless
No,
that's
no, no.
specified.
Now, as long as they've been here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I was thinking,
We can do it within a year.
yeah, I mean, the time frame, I mean, I guess I would need to take that from you, and then you do use it between now and, a period of time specified.
If by June 30th, that may be as
Okay, now I make a motion that we offer the employees 2 hours paid off time of their choosing between now and June 30th, 2021, and that they coordinate it appropriately to their department heads. And the department head, I would say, needs to make that, whether it's 2 weeks of notice or, so that every department's different. I don't want to micromanage that.
Got it. Motion by Mr. Tripp, and a second by Mr. Peterson on that one.
I just have a question. Well, why would we just give them some money, give them a raise? I'm just asking, why don't we give our employees a raise? Are we looking at that?
I think that the reason I made the suggestion that I did is because this was to take the place of a lunch that we no longer are. It's a one-time fee for the lunch, and so I'm just trying to keep in mind the budget of the county also.
I understand. I still want to put it there. Thank you.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? So moved. Thank you.
Thank you. I know that'd be great. Appreciate it.
Mr. Chair, I have a question, please.
Yes, ma'am.
Can I ask Mr. Martin, are we going to look at giving our employees a raise, at least in 2021? Are we going to look at that at all?
That, we said previously that we would discuss it the last quarter of this year.
Yeah,
Come
in the
back
budget,
next
that we
year.
did, it's that budget, that's what we.
And so we're going to do it in March,
It can be here next month.
November.
November.
Okay, all right.
Let me ask you a question here. Will we be updated on what's the status of the finances of the county before we start looking at this? Will you give something to us on that?
I will. I mean, I know that was a pretty exhaustive report that Ms. Coleman shared with you, but if there's more specific,
I just want to make sure if we talk about this, we can sit down and talk about giving away, doing these things.
That's a pretty good report.
Just give us an
I don't know,
update.
Mr. Chairman, if you want to work.
Yeah, we'll do a workshop on it, and then set up a committee and put it together.
For one second, could he give us the recommendations of what you looking at adding that we can look at? No? Can you give us that?
I will, and Mr. Chairman, just to, and we'll talk about this in much more detail, but I just want to remind you still, the economy is not back to 100%, and so all we have in terms of fine numbers are the numbers for revenue that's already been received. So, again, our sense of certainty going forward is still not where traditionally.
That's the question I've been asking ever since we've been talking about getting away.
Yeah, but that'll be a good.
Our motion by Mr. Pearson and John, our second, Mr. Goodwin, Mr. Johnson, all in favor, say aye.
Mr. Mark, you give us a certain.